I'm Glenn Smith, and welcome to Legal Lines. This is our 2020 election edition, and Legal Lines is brought to you by the York County Bar Foundation. Today, our special guest is President Commissioner Julie Wheeler. Julie, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so 2020 elections. The general election is right around the corner.
It is less than 30 days away.
Is the county ready?
The county is ready.
Excellent. Well, one of the things we want to try to do here today with Legal Lines is inform our viewers about what they can do in order to vote, because we want to get the vote out and we want them to be able to vote correctly, right? Okay, so before we get started, this program is for information purposes only, and it's not intended to substitute for professional legal advice in a particular situation. You should always consult a lawyer if you have questions about specific situations concerning your rights and responsibilities. So Julie, as you said, general election is November 3rd, but we have a couple deadlines, important deadlines that are coming up. If somebody hasn't registered to vote yet, what's the deadline to get that done?
Yeah, so the deadline to register to vote is October 19th. I can share with you that so far the county has processed over 44,000 registration requests. That could be a party change, that could be a name change, address change, or a new voter. As of today, we are caught up on the backlog of registrations. We certainly do anticipate registrations to continue in 2016 presidential general election. On the last day to request a registration, the county had requests for 13,000 registration changes. So we are going to do our best to keep the backlog at a minimum so that if that happens again, we can get this processed in a timely manner. So October 19th is the last day to request a registration.
Okay, so mark those dates. Well, there's also another really important deadline coming up too, because this year, although we've been able to do in the past, there's a lot more focus on not showing up in person to vote, but actually doing it via mail. So there's a deadline approaching, if you have not done so already, to register for mail, and what's that deadline?
So that deadline is October 27th. There is discussion that that date may move to coincide with the deadline for registrations, October 19th. But as of today, October 27th is the last date to request a mail-in and or absentee ballot. I would encourage you, if you choose to vote by mail, please do it early. I will share with you that 1 week to process a mail-in ballot, get it to you, and have you get it back in time for the ballot to be counted is pretty tight. So all counties are facing that challenge. So if you want to vote by mail, please get your request in early.
There's a lot of information that's out there, and some of it's accurate, and some of it's not, and some of it's a combination of all the above. But for mail-in ballots, that seems to be what everybody's talking about today. Mailing ballots in is not something unusual. We've done this in the past, right?
Yeah, we've done it in the past. It was called an absentee ballot in the past. Now we still have absentee ballots, and those are to be used for people who will be absent from the area to vote. So process inherently is the same, how an absentee and a mail-in ballot is processed. So that process has existed. What has changed is the magnitude of those requests. So in 2016 presidential election, we had 8,301 requests for absentee ballots. As of today, we're over 70,000 requests for a mail-in and or absentee ballot. We anticipate that we are going to be somewhere around 100,000 in those requests.
100,000. And I checked for the primaries. I don't know what the numbers are up for the general, but for the primaries for this year, there were 246,000 registered voters in York County. So if the numbers are still about the same, that's almost a half of the voters that are registered in this county.
Well, we are now up to 301,000 registered voters. So now it'll be about a third. But again, we anticipate that registration number to still climb slightly prior to Election Day.
All right, so we've got two options. I can physically show up to my polling precinct and vote, or I can mail in. So let's start with in-person voting. That's something that most voters are familiar with because many of us have done that over the years. So is in-person voting any different this year, this November, compared to years past?
It'll be a little bit different. I am voting in person. I can share with your viewers that we have 161 polling locations in York County. All will be opened, and all have confirmed judges of elections to preside over the elections. And as of to date, we have over 800 people volunteering to work as poll workers. So we are in really good shape from a staffing standpoint for all of those polling locations. What is a little bit different, although not so much different from the primary, is the requirements around social distancing that need to be followed. So we have personal protective equipment kits that are already built for those 161 polling locations. They will be given to the judge of elections. They will contain things like hand sanitizers, masks. They will also contain tape so that we can mark tape on the floor 6 feet apart from the actual voting machine so that people know to maintain their distance as they're going up to cast their ballot. We'll certainly have some spare masks should somebody come in and forget their mask in their car or forget to bring it, and if they want to wear one, we will certainly have a few spares there for folks. But we are doing our best to create a safe environment for people to vote in person should they choose to do that.
Great. So anybody who has any concerns about social distancing or a healthy, safe environment, the county has certainly taken a lot of precautions in order to create a safe environment for people to go and physically vote.
Yes, we have.
Great. One of the things I noticed back over the past few months is there's been some changes as to polling locations. And I know there's a couple reasons that that has actually happened. Last article that I saw was somewhere around 11 different voting locations have changed. If I'm not sure where I need to go to vote, is there a way for me to figure that out?
Sure. If you go visit the website at www.yorkcountypa.gov, right on the homepage there is a lot of voting information. So as of today, we have 12 polling locations that have been changed from a permanent basis. So these were in the process to be changed regardless of COVID and what's going on around that. These were locations that the county had looked at to improve the voter experience. So the previous polling location may have not been ADA compliant, or it may have been constrained from a space standpoint. So those 12 permanent locations were done again to improve the voter experience. We have 2 polling locations that will be somewhat temporary in nature. Spring Garden 4, which is normally at the Grumbacher Center. The Grumbacher Center is unavailable for us to use at this time. We are working on a temporary location for that. And Spring and Sperry 6. So those 2 locations, we're working on some temporary facilities, and we should have those identified actually by the end of the day today.
So now, Julie, there is a need for volunteers this year. We've seen a lot of articles out there about poll workers and other volunteers. Where does the county stand as far as that goes?
So the county is in great shape. All 161 polling locations have a judge of election confirmed. We also have over 800 poll workers confirmed at those locations. So the county is in really good shape from a staffing standpoint. We still want to get a few more workers at the polls. The great thing is, between the primary and the general election, we actually built a database of poll workers which has 2,000 volunteers in. So we are starting to go through that list and look for additional staffing at the polls. We're going to do our best to keep the staffing in a geographic area. So if somebody lives, let's just say, in Hanover and we have an empty spot in Hanover, we'll certainly pull from somebody who's physically living close versus trying to piecemeal stuff. So the county right now is in really good shape from a staffing standpoint.
So if I want to volunteer for this, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've gone there, I've voted before, but it seems very daunting. Is there training involved?
The county's already conducted roughly 16 trainings for our judges and our poll workers, and we will continue to do trainings up until they're not needed anymore. So if you want to volunteer, if you call into the office, put your name on the list, and if you're identified as a volunteer to work, you will be trained.
Great. So it doesn't sound very difficult at all.
No.
Excellent. Okay, and we can use a few more volunteers, so sign up.
Sign up.
So as we said, deadline's coming up October 27th to register for your mail-in ballot. Let's talk a little bit about ballots. A lot of people haven't done these before, and you hear a lot that if I don't do it right, or if it's this difficult technical process, my ballot's going to get thrown out, my vote won't count. So what does voting by mail-in ballot look like?
Okay. So I actually have a sample here. Now this isn't someone's actual ballot or mail, so there won't be any identifiers on it. But in the mail, what you will get is this is how the ballot will look when it arrives to you. And then inside this envelope, there's a couple pieces of information that are very important. One is an instruction sheet. One is your actual ballot, and again, this is a sample ballot, so it says sample on it. This isn't anyone's specific ballot. Then there are two other envelopes in there. One is the official election ballot, and then the other is the mailing envelope. It is very important that you, once you vote on your ballot, that goes in this envelope. If it does not go in this envelope, it will not be counted. So that's kind of step one. Ensure that you put your ballot in this envelope so it's counted. Once it's in this envelope, then you need to put it in the mailing envelope. And there's a couple things that are really important here as well. On the back, you need to make sure you sign and date and fill out the information. If that information is not filled out, your ballot will not count. That'll be put to the side. So you've heard people talk about these naked ballots. What that means is a ballot that does not come in this. It just shows up in your mailing envelope. So that's what's considered a naked ballot. So make sure your ballot goes in the official election ballot, which then goes in your mailing envelope, which then you sign and date and fill out the information on the back. A couple things with the actual envelope for mail. The postage is prepaid, so you don't need to buy a stamp. That's paid courtesy of the state. In addition, each envelope will have a unique barcode on it that uniquely identifies the voter. So for example, Glenn, if you want to vote by mail and this comes in the mail, there will be a unique barcode associated with you. Okay. So what happens when that comes back to the county, we take this scanning device that will scan the barcode. And that barcode then, that scanning of that barcode will go into our system and it will identify that I have received Glenn Smith's ballot by mail. So if Glenn Smith would attempt to go to a polling location and vote in person, there's a couple checks and balances. Number one, a thing called a poll book is generated and given to the judge of his election. That can't be generated till after the deadline is passed for a mail-in ballot. So what will happen is when we've processed all the mail-in ballots, the poll book gets generated, which goes to the actual location, and what the poll book will identify is it'll have an M by your name if you are someone that requested a mail-in ballot. So if you go to the polling location and you say, I would like to vote, they'll look in the book and it'll have an M and it'll say, oh, Attorney Smith, you've been identified as somebody that's voted by mail. If you say, well, I didn't vote by mail, there are two options that you will undergo. One is if you say I didn't vote by mail, but I have everything with me. So if you bring the entire packet with all the contents in it, what will happen is you will sign a declaration. This will be destroyed and you will be able to vote just like any other person that comes in person. If you show up and say, well, I wanted to vote by mail, but I didn't vote by mail, and you don't have any materials, you will still be able to vote by what's called a provisional ballot. That ballot will be set aside, and then what will happen is when that provisional ballot comes back here to election headquarters, we will look in the system to see if you've already voted. So if we've already received your ballot and it's been scanned in the system, it'll say, oh, Glenn Smith already voted by mail. That provisional ballot will be put aside and will not be counted. So there's a couple checks and balances that are in place to ensure one vote per one person.
Excellent. So every person who has a mail-in ballot has their own unique, distinct barcode.
Correct.
So for me to be able to vote twice, it's a virtual improbability.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the mail-in ballots, I can obviously mail them in because they're called mail-in ballots. Yeah. When do I need to mail them in by?
So there's been some changes here with legislation and Supreme Court rulings. So as of today, the process is if your ballot is postmarked by November 3rd and received in our elections office by the end of the day on November 6th, it will still be counted. If it comes in after November 6th, regardless of when it's postmarked, we are not permitted to count it.
Now, I can drop it off or any time prior to that. Is that correct?
You can drop it off anytime prior. Again, I'll remind your viewers that it is postage paid, so you can stick it in the mail. If for some reason you do want to bring it in person, we have a ballot box here at 28 East Market Street, county headquarters, because this is where our election office is. We have moved that ballot box to the lobby of the administration building. That's available between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., which are our county hours. That is under camera surveillance as well as guarded by a sheriff's deputy. So you could drop it off there. In addition, we will have 3 times where that box will be moved from the lobby to the sidewalk in front of our building for people to drop it off in person. The first date is October 24th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., November 1st from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., and then November 3rd, Election Day, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. On those dates, we will have 2 sheriff's deputies guarding the box. In addition, we will have 2 county employees that will be staffing the box, and we actually have a tent that will be over the ballot box, so should there be inclement weather, hopefully you won't get too wet dropping your ballot off. So those are options that do exist. Only 1 ballot per person, your ballot, and that's it. If someone comes up and they have 2 ballots, we will turn you away. We are not permitted to take more than 1 ballot. There is signage on the ballot box in both Spanish and English that signifies you must only put in your own ballot.
So to confirm that, if I say, oh, I'm going to just take mine and my wife's down for me, I can't take hers.
You can't take your wife's. The only exception, if you want to bring a ballot for someone that has a disability, if you go to www.votespa.gov, there is a form that can be filled out allowing you to drop off a ballot for a disabled individual.
And it's a rather easy form. I took a look at it before we got together today, and it's a very simple form to fill out. And as I noted for that is you can be the representative for one other voter unless it's someone else in the household. So for somebody who has a disability that would prevent them from completing the mail-in ballot process, you would be able to do that. Okay, so we talked about the polls, we talked about mailing. If I drop off my ballot in advance at the drop box, and I will say I saw it in action back in the primary out on the street, and it was a very smooth process. Where do these ballots go? Because if my understanding is right, you can't open them up and you can't look at them until Election Day. So what happens to the ballots that come in early?
So we have a secret location.
Oh.
So what happens with the actual ballot box? So we've actually improved our procedure between the primary and the general. The ballot box is locked. The key to the ballot box is in the sheriff's deputy's office in a box that's locked. So what happens is, for example, on Friday, I went to the ballot box to empty it and take it downstairs. I get the sheriff's deputy who gets the key, who escorts me to the ballot box. He unlocks it. I pull out the contents. He locks the ballot box. He accompanies me down to the elections office into the room where the ballots will be stored. We sign a log that states the date and time, what sheriff deputy accompanied me, and that it was me, and I sign it. Right before it goes into the locked area, it gets scanned. The barcode gets scanned, and that's the signification in the system that says this person voted by mail. It remains in that locked location until November 3rd at 7 a.m. We don't have pre-canvassing yet here in Pennsylvania, so that ballot then will not be touched until 7 a.m. on November 3rd. So.
All right, well, that leads us right into the next thing is canvassing. So canvassing is the tallying up of the votes. What does that look like? I've seen the inside of this before, and it's a rather work-intensive process.
It's a very intensive process. I will say York County was one of the few counties in the primary election that had all of their ballots counted on election day. So we're looking to duplicate that accomplishment. We knew what it took to get the ballots processed in the primary. We're anticipating 100,000. So it really becomes a capacity issue, the capacity to process those ballots. We have an assembly line set up at a high level. What it looks like is for the mail-in ballots, we have envelope openers, and what happens is this exterior envelope that has everything in, we will stack those. They will get sliced here. by one individual. We will pick those up. They will be delivered to a table much like this. So we have to social distance. So we're using a very large room. So you would get an envelope. That person would pull out this envelope. Then we have another individual that comes and picks these up, takes them to the letter opener. They get opened. Then that gets taken to a different individual who then pulls the ballot out and flattens it. Then we have another individual that comes by and picks up the ballot. So the reason we have all of those different individuals touching the ballot is so that not one person stays with the same ballot. So we ensure that there is anonymity in your vote. So nobody knows how Glenn Smith votes or how Julie Wheeler votes. It's quite a production, and we're looking to duplicate that. As long as we don't exceed 100,000 mail-in ballots, we are confident that on Election Day, any ballot that is received up into including Election Day will be counted on November 3rd.
Now, one of the important things to note for the election board that's involved in it, this is a bipartisan committee, correct?
Correct. The 3 commissioners sit on the election board. I sit as the president, and then the other 2 commissioners sit on the board.
And there's also observers from the various parties that are present as well.
Yes, if they want to be, they can be. Yep, they're required to have what's called a poll watcher certificate, but as long as they provide that and the appropriate credentials, they are permitted to watch.
When is it official?
Great question. So right now, we are permitted to count mail-in ballots as long as they're postmarked November 3rd and received in the elections office by November 6th. So we will still be counting some ballots. I'm speculating through November 6th. Our plan would be to, as of November 7th, have all of the ballots counted and posted on the website.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's an awful lot of work.
It's an incredible amount of work.
But important work as
Very
well.
important work. We want folks to feel we are taking this very seriously. And safety, security, efficiency, all part of the process. We have great people here at the county working. They're doing their very best. For any of you that may have a question, you want to call in, please be patient with the staff. Today I came in and we had 100 voicemails between last night when I left and this morning. So they are doing their best to provide great customer service. So just please be patient with them, but they will take care of every request that comes in.
Excellent. Well, again, one more time, if people want more information or some of the things that we talked about here today, where can they go to get more information?
2 places you can go. First, I would ask that you go to the website, www.yorkcountypa.gov. There's a wealth of information out there, including a frequently asked questions guide that gets updated continually. Go there first. If your question is not answered there, you can certainly call the elections office, and that number is 717-771-9604. As a last resort, you can certainly come in here in person between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, provided it's not a holiday like it is today. But I would encourage you to go to the website first, phone second, and then in person third.
Now, I would also mention as well, the Department of State for Pennsylvania also offers an incredible amount of information as well. So there's another good source for the folks to take a look at. So that's at, let's see, votespa.com. So lots of information on there as well. So elections are around the corner. Deadlines are fast approaching. If you haven't registered to vote, we encourage you to do so. It is easy to do. You can do it online. It's simple. And the process, as President Commissioner Julie Wheeler has told us, is safe and it is secure. So we encourage you to get out the vote this year. So again, Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We appreciate the work that you do. And I'm Glenn Smith. This is Legal Lines. This is brought to you and sponsored by the York County Bar Foundation. And I will mention one final time for our disclaimer, as soon as I find it here, that this program is for information purposes only. It's not intended to substitute for professional legal advice in a particular situation. You should always consult a lawyer if you have questions about specific situations concerning your rights and responsibilities. So thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you soon.